Hey, Augustin,
Hi.
how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
How did you listen? Are you listening?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good,
Good.
good, good. How are you, my friend? My God, how the world is changed so much.
Yes. In the last month, it's true. Well, it's okay. Every day is the same, you know. Uh, but I try to keep busy and motivated, and just yeah. It's nice to see you. It's nice to. I think it's
Did you recognize me?
the quarantine
Look,
beard.
I
Yes.
I don't cut my beard since day one from quarantine.
Yes.
Ay, ay, ay. But look, we already have 220
Uh-huh.
people, so probably very soon will be there will be good questions for you. But first of all, I want to know if everybody is well in your family, with everybody in this period, difficult period. You are in Connecticut now, no?
Yes.
Mm.
We're all doing okay. My relatives in Germany are fine. My mother lives in Italy, so that
Ah, she's still in Italy.
is in Italy. That is a difficult, but she's doing well. But people for a long time could not leave their house only to go grocery shopping. So it's just been very. I think one of the hardest things. It's very lonely for people, and you kind of
Hmm.
don't have the kind of structure that none of us have the kind of structure that we used to. Our lives have a certain rhythm, and now
Yeah.
gone. And so it's, I think, also hard kind of psychologically, to keep going. But everyone is in my family and my friends we're doing well. And how about you? Is everything?
My family is in Trieste, in Italy. It's quite difficult time, but they are well. They are well. They are safe. So this is the most important thing. And here in Brazil, also everything closed. Everything, we are going out just for the supermarket and and pharmacy, drugstore, and that's it. Actually, my first question to you uh, is, how was your recovering after the first days? I think that everybody, me too, in the first days of this quarantine, without any venue in the future, it's difficult to find a new rhythm in your life, no? How fast and how did you react to this?
I think I well. So I was. It was on March 12th, I think. I still have a rehearsal with an orchestra, and then an hour before the concert, the concert was canceled.
Ah, 1 hour before the concert.
Yes, so it was really,
Ooh.
really felt very sudden. I mean, I had already some canceled things the following week, but it was very sudden. I went home, and of course, I immediately was thinking what's going to happen. I thought it was I mean, at the time, everyone was kind of thinking of a shorter period.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, I'll try to use it productively. I mean, actually, by now, as everyone has adapted to this and adjusted their expectations, now we're
Mm-hmm.
already talking about things being canceled in the summer. There was a concert that was just canceled in September for me
Mm.
in Prague, and so it now has a much longer perspective, and so that's been, of course, sad. But
Mm.
I felt like, in the first moments, I thought, it will also be kind of nice to be at home a little bit, and it can feel, for the first few days, it can almost feel like a holiday maybe, but very
Mm-hmm.
quickly it becomes clear, I have to do something, because
Yes.
um, I have to set some goals for myself, because there's somehow otherwise you feel like it's hard to have the self-discipline to to take out the violin and start working, you're working towards what, right? We always need a goal in mind, and in the last years, it was always, you know, the goals sort of were set automatically because I just had concerts and recordings, and and now suddenly I kind of have to create some things myself. So I had this idea of making some videos like with kind of like masterclass tips actually some time ago, but there was always something more urgent to do, you know, always something, oh no, I really need to practice for this, I really need to do this other thing. So I always put it off, and so one of the first things I thought, maybe I can finally do this and see how it goes. And since then it's kind of kept me motivated, you know, it's something to do. It's also very satisfying when something is finished, or when I've, you know, done something and I feel like, you know, I was productive. So that can also be satisfying, and can help structure my day. I think it's important because you can feel. I was talking with a pianist yesterday who is in New York and has been in her apartment for 2 months, and you can kind of tell that she's very feels kind of lost, you know, like at some point. And it's important to kind of set like a rhythm for yourself. It kind of takes to find if the goals are not coming from outside, you need to create your own goals, no? Yes, it's a little bit more how I felt actually when I was a student, when sometimes I had like a student, but maybe not seeing my teacher for a while, you know, like I had to like set some goals for myself. But anyway, that's
no, because, you know, this was my first question, because in these days, in the last days, I received many questions like these. From students, from young violinists. So I think is a very important matter in this moment. Many people find themselves kind of lost, no? But I think it's important to invent something, to create some goals, to continue to keep practicing, and to not to lose the focus, no?
Well, it can be a chance for also tackling some bigger projects that you couldn't fit in otherwise. I mean, I know some people who are learning a new language, or you know, someone I know started learning Chinese and Mandarin, or you can I don't know, just learn a new piece, like things that if you think long term, because short term this is not a good time, right? We're not gonna be, musicians will not be working anytime soon, and already next, you know, later on this year and next year, you know, there is uncertainty, so this is not it's going to be a very hard time. But if you think long term, maybe it's possible to use this time to learn some new things, so that once things do start up again, you know, you've grown, you have not stagnated, because I think we can never stay exactly at the same point. So if we just try to stay at the same point, we actually maybe get worse, right? We have to get better at something, right? So at least we develop.
Yes. and are you practicing in these days? Are you practicing more on new repertoire, or maybe reviewing some technical things? Some, for example, I am working a lot, rethinking to some basics, some vibrato exercises, and also start to learning something new, no? But what about you? You are learning new pieces, or more basic things?
It's mostly been well, I did start on well, basically I looked through my music, and the first thing I did was I actually found some things that I hadn't played in a long time, and I thought maybe this would be cool to do, or maybe I can do a video of this, you know, and I haven't played this in forever. I did learn a new piece by John Corigliano, these red violin caprices, and solo violin. And actually, I was supposed to play it, but maybe it'll still happen. But anyway, I was supposed to play it in August. Not canceled yet, but so initially I thought, oh, I have to learn this anyway. Let me just start with that. And so, you know, I've been playing it, had a good time with it. It's very effective. Of course, like everyone else, I took up Bach. I think it's the most obvious thing to play.
Yeah.
But now I see everyone's playing Bach. Everyone's
yeah,
all
it's
the
true.
time. So it's almost
it's strange. It's the Beethoven year, but it becomes a Bach year.
So I have a feeling that maybe every violinist and cellist will bring out a Bach CD at the end of this year, maybe.
What about you? Do you have some project in this sense, or not yet? To record Bach solo pieces?
Maybe. I mean, at the moment, I can't get into a recording studio, you know. So like but possibly. I actually, yes, I have been thinking about it, and before, and since I have been playing a lot of Bach, it is a thought. The only problem is if everyone else also does it, then at some point you kind of think, well, maybe it's not the best. I don't know.
Augustin, how it works with you, with a violinist on your level, with your schedule, with I mean before the quarantine, of course, but how and after, how it works about the repertoire? How much? How do you have total freedom to choose the repertoire to record, or it's a sort of dialogue together with the company? How it works?
It is a dialogue with the company. I'm quite happy with when now I record for Warner Classics. I'm very happy. They are very open with the ideas I've had. But of course, in a situation when if now 5 other famous violinists record something, then maybe they would say, why don't you wait 2 years to record this? Just there is a certain market, right? And you want to bring your recordings at the right time. I don't really understand that side as well as they do, so there is some advice about that. But I'm very happy that in terms of programming, they're actually pretty open. I mean, also there are, you know, it can't be too expensive. There are other things to consider always. So it is a dialogue, but it's not. But I'm quite happy. It's not. I know that there are some other labels where it can be more that, you know, you can only record this piece because we need it in our catalog, and we're not interested in, you know.
Yeah. My question, actually, my question was because I spoke with other violinists in your level of fame, your level of schedule, and they have some problems in this sense with the label because they have not so much freedom.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different how their priorities and how they I don't know, their whole model, the financial model, how it works. There are even now some famous labels that will only take artists if the artists pay them a portion of their money that they make from concerts. You know, like that's a new model that came up actually. That's some labels are doing. So it's a very different world from how it was maybe 20 years ago. Like when I was little, record labels were very powerful, right? They could make a career. Now it's a bit of a different situation, but they're still great. I mean, there are a lot of CDs are being released, and very good CDs. And maybe one thing that's actually much better now is that thanks to the internet, I mean, the internet has made many things harder for the record labels, but one thing is that you can make a CD with very different composers on it. You know, you can make. I made a CD of Brahms and Ligeti. In the old days, it was like, well, where do you put it, under B or under L or under A or Hadelich? Like, where does it go in the store? And so they always wanted, you know, all Brahms, all Ligeti. There was a way that it had to do with how the music was presented in a store. But now we can just search for music, and that's no longer an issue. You can actually make much wilder, more creative, crazy programs, and more interesting, actually, more exciting for for everyone, and it doesn't you don't run into this issue. So that's one thing that's better, I think.
Great. Augustin, this is very a question from myself, because I knew last time when we saw last time after your Sibelius here, actually I still remember that Sibelius, especially the second movement, was something unbelievable. But I remember that we spoke in our dinner after the concert, and you had some concert to play together with Natalie Stutzman conducting, and she's very good friend of mine, and I am very curious, how did you feel with her, because I have the feeling that she's an amazing musician.
I liked it very much. So it was, we did the Brahms concerto together.
Brahms.
Seattle in October. She has an approach. Well, she was a singer, right? And
yeah,
I think that Brahms writes very singing, lyrical lines, and there was something very, very musical, very alive, very flexible about it. That I think was there was some really amazing details she brought out. So I enjoyed it very much.
Great, very happy to know, because when two friends are playing together, two friends of mine are playing together for the first time, I am looking forward that everything is going well.
Right, and then you have to choose who you remain.
Yeah, no. It's like choose between sharing and oyster. It's difficult to choose with this kind of artist. Augustin, a question that I am doing some lives twice in a week during this time, and one question from young students is always coming up, and I know that it depends, and my answer it's always depends, but if you can explain a little bit of your view, try to think in a young student, not yet performing player, practicing at home. Always the problem is how much the percentage of basic technique, the repertoire, if it's possible or not, practicing the basic things on the repertoire without playing practice basics, these kind of things. I think it's good if you can give us some words from you, because of course it has another meaning if it's coming from a concert artist.
I mean, I think it depends. If you want specifically to improve a certain area of your playing, then it makes sense to look for a piece like an etude that has a lot of that technique. Like if you're thinking of like you need to work on double stop, you need to work on vibrato, you need to work on shifting, then you choose something that has a lot of that, so you can really work on it once and for all. But I think that one of the big problems is, there are only 24 hours in a day, and we can't play 24 hours a day. There's a certain number of hours at which our brain is really working well, and eventually, it'd be less productive. And so I'm a big fan of efficiency. So, for example, if you want to practice thirds, yes, you could take out Flash scale system and work on thirds there, but you could also take Paganini Caprice number 18 and practice the thirds there. Then you get better at thirds, and you've also learned Paganini Caprice 18, right? You've done two things in the same time. So I think whenever you can find a passage in I want to say a real piece. In a piece, let's say that you really want to play, that's a great piece of music. Whenever you can find a technique you want to improve in that music, it's better to practice it there, because you will get a bigger benefit. You will also learn the piece at the same time. So, for example, if you want to improve your octaves, you could take out the Sibelius concerto, ending of first movements, so many octaves. It's very difficult and a lot to work on. So maybe, and then if that's too hard, maybe you can start off with some octaves from an etude, but then transition to that. And there can be a role that etudes have whenever you, especially when you want to just work on the basics of a certain technique. But I think whenever you can transition to real pieces, like great pieces, that's useful. It also makes it more fun, because because it's a good piece of music, then it's more fun to practice. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is just dumb etude. I have to play. I don't know.
Yeah.
At these days, I don't really set aside time for. It's not like I set aside an hour for practicing technique, an hour to do this. I basically practice these things as they come up in certain pieces. The problems that come up, but there were times when I was growing up when I was specifically taking out pieces I wanted to improve my sound. So I found slow movements where I could work on that, or where I was more focused on improving certain things that I felt like were not good enough.
Another thing that I think it's very important for me, at least, to convince my students, for example, the importance of the extra musical influences. You are living in one of the best cities in the world in this sense, because New York, it offers so many museums and so many, it's amazing. But how much do you think that this kind of influence, readings, books, paintings, museum, can help your musical skill?
Yeah, I think it can help in two ways. One is if you look specifically at art that the composers were influenced by. So like you're playing Debussy, so you look at paintings. I mean, that's the most obvious example, maybe, because it's
impressionist.
Yeah,
sí,
impressionist, so visually influenced, and I like painting with the music. So just looking at the kind of art and philosophy also that's, I don't know, it helps you understand how those composers thought, and as a result, what they were trying to express. You start to understand better, this is what they were like as people, and they wanted to express this, and then it's easier to do it. So that, in that sense, it helps. The other way in which it helps, I think, is more general, that if all you ever do is play music only, then maybe you don't, it's important. You need to have something also to say to people emotionally, and to do that, it can be important to be inspired by other things. But it can be books. It can be great movies, or it can be just it can be great visual art. There are many ways to draw inspiration. You can be inspired by certain people you meet who have really interesting thoughts. But just basically growing your mind this way, I think over the long run, the people who do that just have more to say, more to communicate, maybe. So that's kind of a general way, just for being more well-rounded. Like, sometimes there are musicians who just their whole life, they play 12 hours a day, and that's all they ever did. And then sometimes, you sort of feel like they need to just experience some other things, so that they can then express them in music.
Yeah, many times you can feel that the music, their music is poor. It's sort of empty. Many times you see, you hear amazing things here, but what to do with that? Many times I have this feeling, and actually I I want to say something about you, that it's something that really it's your characteristic. You have two, for me, from outside. You have two characteristics that are absolutely yours. One is that, for me, you are one of the most singing violinists today. In many pieces, in many even also the pieces that you play with us in the last years, Sibelius, Barber, and Mendelssohn, we did many things. But also in the recordings, you have always a sort of voice imitating line, way of playing, let's say, like this, and sort of opera singer, old school opera singer style, and this is very unique, I think, rare, quite rare. And the other one, which is also for me very important and very peculiar, is that it's very clear that you're playing, it's always starting from the chamber music mentality and way of think to the music. No, these two characteristics for me are together, are part of your special gift when you play. For me, probably you played a lot of chamber music when also when you was very young, probably.
Actually, because I grew up in the countryside in Italy, like in Tuscany, kind of not so much around other musicians. So I played. There were some pianists I played with, and I learned a lot from them. But actually, chamber music was something I really discovered when I was 19, 20, when I came to America, and it changed very much how I played music. I played everything. Just because, so initially when you play with other people, it's very difficult. It's like, how do you get it together? I have no idea what they're gonna do, and I don't know. As you do it more and more, you start gaining the sense that you know what they're going to play before they do it. Just because of you just played the phrase, you just listen, and I know when they're gonna play the next note. It becomes like it's like empathy that you can just understand, and it's like when you talk with someone you know really well, you know how they're going to finish the sentence, right? Just started it, we can guess, and this I think it's a really wonderful musical feeling. It's one of the reasons why chamber music is very rewarding, and I came to realize, well, as I then played the concerto again by the same composer, like let's say I played a lot of Brahms chamber music, and then I played Brahms concerto, then I played it very differently, because I started to understand the other lines, and then understood he wrote the violin line often. It was the last thing he wrote. You know, everything else he wrote first, and there's always a relationship between what the violin plays and the rest. I mean, one thing that's, to some extent, I knew that because I played a lot of piano growing up, and so I was already like I was listening to the rest, but I always I didn't really care about the other. I always was putting myself first, and then I started realizing there is a kind of relationship that is important in the music. So I think even if you're leading when you're a soloist, of course you have to lead people and give a direction, but still there's always a connection with the other voices. You have to listen, and you can tell whether a violinist is listening only to the top line, or whether a violinist is actually hearing these lines that are going on, and it's something that this is where playing the piano can be really helpful, or playing chamber music. Just it trains your ear to hear more from the bottom upwards rather than from the top down, which is the danger for violinists because we're a melodic instrument. So sometimes we only pay attention to the melody.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. And what about the singer? Because your variety of vibrato, what your sound, your variety of sound, actually do you remember the first time you played with us, when it was, more or less?
2010. I think it was this Barber concerto, right?
Barber was the first time, yeah. 2010 was.
Yeah, Justin Brown, yeah.
Okay, so last time was 2019.
Last year.
No? Last year. So in 9-10 years, I heard so clearly the improvement. You were amazing also in our Barber, but in a way, your maturity in the last years are especially audible from the point of view from in the sound quality, the sound variety, this all about the sound. This is what it makes even better the Augustin today in comparison with the Augustin of 10 years ago. For me, this is my view.
Well, yeah, it's a long. I think that working on your sound is something that never really stops, right? There's a certain way that, as a violinist, you imagine like how you want it to sound, and it takes a long time to somehow try to get closer to that. And there's so many components. So when I was growing up, I worked a lot on the sound in terms of what the left hand does, like the vibrato, and having a nice vibrato. And I was always wanting like a sweet singing sound. Like I grew up at the time when Utu Ugi was, he was the big violinist, and he played very beautifully and lyrically. And like when he was playing Paganini, it was really nice and very singing. And so that was kind of my ideal of sound, more than some other violinists who were like technically incredible, but like the sound is a little more like it's less so freely singing. So
ti dico qualcosa in italiano, perché mi hanno chiesto di parlare un po' di italiano con te, solo un poco.
Okay.
E io ho iniziato a studiare violino grazie a Uto Ughi, perché io suonavo piano, i miei genitori sono pianisti, tutti e due, e un giorno avevo 6 anni e mezzo, ho visto un concerto di Uto Ughi alla televisione e ho chiesto, voglio un violino. Quindi we have this in common. Yes. Too. I
remember when I was 8 and I saw him perform, and he was wearing a white suit up on stage. It was totally full of people, and he was wearing a white suit, and I was like, I want to be just like him.
Yeah.
So
he was very, very good looking guy.
Yes,
very, very good looking and
charming and
wonderful sound.
So
oh yes,
beautiful sound. So I think what I was saying was when I was growing up, I was kind of paying more attention to that part of the sound of the left hand because I wasn't understanding so well yet the role of the right hand. And as an adult, and even in the last 10 years, it's an ongoing thing that I understand better and better the bow and how to shape the sound of the bow, the sound quality, how to make it. How to get a bigger dynamic range with the color that I want, and I don't know. This is there are many components to it. But what you say that it should be shaped like a singer, I think in a lot of music, the violin is used as a singing voice, and there's a certain shape to the phrase. And I think the way that we sing is the most natural way to make music. It's in a way it's actually easiest to make music with the phrasing you want when you sing, because then exactly what you want comes out. I mean, of course, maybe my voice is horrible, so it's not really what I want. But the shape,
my voice too.
it's kind of maybe the most natural way to do it, and so that was that's been kind of like my guide, trying to play more like that and finding elements that of what I'm doing. that interfere with that. Like, I'm doing this motion, or my vibrato is doing this, and it makes it sound not, not what I want. And basically, also not only adding things, but also eliminating things that I think are not what I want. And it's it's an ongoing.
I was watching 2 days ago or 3 days ago one of the small short videos that Wispelway is doing, the cellist.
Yes.
And he was working on bow change on the frog, no?
Yeah.
And he was saying that the more I felt this very, very useful for violinists too. He said that the problem is not when, of course, if somebody has bow change problems, of course, he needs to work on it. But once that you change the bow on the frog, the tendency is that just after the change, the sound just go down instead to improve. So he was saying that after you change the bow, you need to keep attention to this part of the bow, not to go too fast, too quick, in order to sustain in this part of the bow the sound before it's too late. And it was quite interesting because he was making some example, and he was changing the bow, and the sound was okay, and then just was going down in intensity, no? So probably you feel comfortable finally after the bow change, and you relax instead to keep.
Well, I think many people are. I mean, there's a little bit of we're worried about the bow change. One thing that happens a lot is that just before a bow change, especially if it's at the frog, and we want to make it smooth, we don't want it to be rough and so forth.
Yeah.
And people kind of get careful, and so you kind of feel the sound like even dip during.
Yeah.
I think if you're aware of how your violin is ringing, it takes some time for the whole instrument to start vibrating. In order for a bow change to sound smooth and the sound to sound continuous, you need to find a way to play that does not disrupt and stop this, that kind of like keeps it going kind of continuously. Otherwise, the moment that you stop those vibrations and restart them, it actually takes quite a while for it to really
so you feel you can listen this shaping, which is not ideal.
It's easy to be, you become used to this shape. And it doesn't sound, it doesn't sound ugly. It sounds fine.
No.
So it's not something that you're like, whoa, that sounds bad. But you kind of get used to it. So you need to pay some attention. This is something that I learned when I was an adult. Also, when I was working on projection, when you play in a small room, it's always loud enough, right? But one of the hard problems, one of the hard things is to play basically loud enough to play with orchestra, but with the kind of sound you want. You don't want it to sound aggressive or rough, you still want to produce the same color, but how to project. And one of the things is really that it takes quite a while for the instrument to really reach the fullest sound. Even when you play very, very loud, it takes a little bit. And so all the bow changes and the note changes during when you play legato, when you're changing the notes, those are the moments where there is a danger of the sound to then dip down. And when I was young, I was always doing portato all the time, right? Constantly, and I thought that's what legato meant, and and so it took, and then I realized that's why it was sounding pretty soft from a distance, because every time I did that, every time I made those,
starting again.
The sound and started again, and actually then as a result it was pretty soft, because the sound does not come out you can't go to maximum instantly. You know, it takes time for the instrument then to ring again. And so I realized if I wanted to something that was legato to really be loud, it really had to be completely legato. And anyway, there are many things like this were a habit. You know, it was a habit. It sounded nice to me, and you know, sounding pretty good. And it was a habit, so I always done it. I was comfortable with it, and so you have to sometimes question those things and realize this is a bad habit.
This habit, because the problem is that many times when you have a habit, your ear, your mind are okay with that, because you feel that it's okay, it's sounding okay, it's not ugly, it's all there. So many times the alarm, it comes from outside, from somebody from outside who say, look, this can be better. So you start thinking. In your case, was like this, or you discover yourself by yourself discover this?
Some things I discovered myself, but some other things I did have help. I mean, we always need feedback sometimes from other people because we can't notice every detail anymore. So nowadays that comes sometimes from conductors, or sometimes like somebody heard the concert and you know gives feedback on the sound. But I remember that the portato thing at the time I was studying at Juilliard with Joel Smirnoff was my teacher, and one day he just he got pretty mad at me, and he said, "Can you please play one time like a real legato? I just want to hear it once." And I said, "What do you mean?" And then I suddenly had this sort of moment where I realized, oh, this is what he needs, and I guess I never do that. Maybe I should try that. And it was something I basically never. I just had not thought about, and it sounded fine. But as I did it, I realized this really is what legato is supposed to be. I mean, portato can be really expressive. It's really important too, right? And I love doing it. I do it all the time. But it needs you need to know. Oh, I'm doing this thing on purpose, not just from habit. And it was a whole side of my playing style that was had kind of been missing, and it was necessary for someone else to tell me that because I couldn't hear it. So sometimes this can happen. This is why we take lessons, right? Ultimately, and why even professional players still sometimes need to have people who give them honest feedback, because at some point, you know, when I was 20 and 25, you know, conductors always told me exactly what they thought. But eventually, people get more, you know, diplomatic, right? They kind of nobody wants to offend anyone, so it's always, oh, it sounds great. You know, sometimes it's important to be close enough to some musicians and some people that they will actually tell you very honestly. Tell you, actually, I think this was not so good what you did there because of this, because of that. And it's necessary to get some criticism. I mean, it never feels good to be criticized, but it's so important.
At the moment, no, but you start think on it.
I think already one day later, I'm usually happy.
Yes.
Because I realized they were, you know, I mean, if it was, you know, if I decide, I think they were right. That's really is something I could do better. Then I'm happy that they told me. So it's very important, but it's true. In the moment, it's never the most fun thing.
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 questions that I wrote down from the people here. The first one, it's very simple and quick. What's the first time that you play every day on the violin?
What's the first thing I play?
First thing, yes.
First thing. So I learned some time ago the importance of like warming up. You know, like when I was growing up, when I was little, I didn't warm up really, because when you're young, it's not so important. I mean, your hands are fine, but eventually you need to warm up. It's to keep your hands healthy. You know, you can't just suddenly like start with something crazy. And was probably like about 10 years ago, so that I had some tendinitis and I realized, oh, I really need to warm up slowly. So I usually play either something slow, like to kind of get my vibrato going and to kind of get my hand moving. Sometimes I start with some trills. I mean, not like crazy trills, but it's a way also to get the fingers warm quite quickly, including I usually chill with the fourth finger as well a little bit, because I feel like I avoid using it so much sometimes that I'm like, I don't want it to forget how to play. So, but you know, not maybe something a little more slowly. So the first 5-10 minutes are a little bit more relaxed this way until I feel, you know, I'm getting warm, and then even the first piece I might pick to practice might not be the hardest yet. You know, I try to get going maybe on something that I'm actually feeling reasonably comfortable with first, and then then I'm like, okay, now it's time to actually play the thing that I can't play yet, that I need to work on. But I don't start. I think if you start with that, then you start off on like a really hard, and you can start off on the wrong foot. You need, for me, it's helpful to play something first that I can already play. I feel pretty good about myself, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna work on something that's really hard. Yeah.
And what about pressure and emotion? How to deal with that playing in public? I don't know. I don't know about you, but I become more and more confident. But I was pretty nervous before enter any stage, and especially before important concert, or for example after a while when I was not playing with an orchestra as a soloist, when I was playing chamber music. It's very different. When you play chamber music, you are sharing, in a way, sharing the responsibility. And when you enter to play a solo concerto, it's always chamber music. You can think about that, but the pressure, it's different, no? And how you deal with this?
Well, if you play a concerto, everyone's looking at you the whole time.
Yeah, this is the point.
Even when you're not playing, even when you're just like walking on stage, you're always like, you know, am I bowing the right way? You know, like because everyone's like, it takes, you have to get kind of used to that. So doing it a lot helps a lot. You know, as you said. So I used to be pretty nervous. But actually, when I was little, I was not nervous. Children are often not nervous because they don't think that far. I don't know. You
don't realize all the problems involved.
But then eventually you become sort of more self-aware and you think further. And then of course you get very nervous. It's natural because you'd be crazy not to be nervous. You're playing in front of other people. I mean, to step on a stage in front of 2,000 people is a crazy thing to do. And actually, even now, like after a month of not doing it, I'm somehow thinking like, wait, how did I do that? So I think actually the next concert I'll play after all of this time off, I'll probably be more nervous than I was before, because it will be again like kind of it's a very intense experience. But two things: you get used to the feeling of it, and eventually I became. I mean, I actually really like the feeling. It kind of is like a high point of my week. Is when I'm there, when I feel so excited. It's important to think of it positively. That rather than, oh no, I'm nervous, I feel terrible, you have to think, I'm too excited. I'm so excited. It is actually a positive emotion. It's just like you have so much of it that it makes it a little harder to play. But it's actually something also that can make you play better, because you have much faster responses. When something goes wrong, you can think really quickly suddenly, and at a speed I could never think that quickly like when practicing. But in that moment, sometimes your mind works very quickly, and so it's also an advantage. And so it's important not to think of it only negatively, but think of it, this is a positive thing. You have to use all this energy to your advantage. And so when I was dealing with nerves, one thing that happened was that I was practicing a certain way, but oftentimes I was practicing things kind of out of context. There was a very hard passage, I practiced it, I could do it, and then in concert maybe it wouldn't work, because now in the context, my fingers were coming from somewhere else, and actually the hand was different. Something's different. The way you stand is different. The way you breathe can be different. So I started to pay more attention to this, to the physical, to where my body is physically. And nowadays, when I before a performance, I do actually pay attention to my breathing also. That's, I think, or before this note, I breathe in. Before this really hard passage, I breathe out. Or when there's something very slow and I want to have bow control, I might breathe out at before reaching the frog, just to help me relax. And I'm clear on where those breaths are, so that in the concert, I can do it the same way. And it's the one thing I can control, because I can't slow down my heart. My heart's going to beat fast, but I can't slow down my breathing and make sure it's very regular. And as a result, my heart will actually calm down too. But if you never think about it, then it can happen that you're on stage and you stop breathing, and the longer you stop breathing, the more scared you get, the faster your heart beats, and then the more your voice starts shaking, and then you stop breathing even more. Anyway, you can get to like a really bad situation that gets worse. And so breathing is very important to get to never get there in the first place. And if you are in that situation, to get out of it, to just remind yourself, just take a deep breath, and you'll already immediately feel better. Like if you just keep breathing, it helps you relax, like breathe slowly, Anyway.
Augustin, we have 6 more minutes before Instagram. Instagram after 1 hour is cutting down. So I want to say bye-bye before Instagram is cutting us. So, but I want just a last thing from you. After this period, nobody knows how much will stay like this. If you would say something about the music, the art, and this is a very difficult question. How is important to go back to a concert hall, to a museum? How is important? Why music and art are so important for people?
Okay, it's a big question with a big answer.
Yeah, I know.
I think, so I think it's very, art can really nurture the human spirit. Like it can give you experiences that can change your life, that can make you, can really stay with you in a very meaningful way. It's not, not only, there's also more superficial music, but sometimes there can be very, very deep experiences that really can give you very much. And I think when you spend your time with music, I think overall, even though there's also a lot of work involved, overall you get back just as much as you gave. It also gives you a lot. So live music, anyone who plays and loves going to concerts knows that live, it feels totally different. It's more intense. You're with other people sharing this moment. As a musician, when you play for other people directly, you are aware of these people you're playing for, and it's a totally different experience. And it's fun to make videos online, and I love doing it, and it's great too, but it's something else. And so it's important to not forget, if now we are only doing music with the internet for a while, it's important to not forget that the real reason why we do it, and what we ultimately have to do, is to do it for real, to do it live in person. And this is the big challenge, is how do we do that? There's obviously a big challenge in this time, because a lot of people in a hall, there are a lot of people in one place, all together in a closed space. So that's something that's not possible right now. And in addition, I mean, we don't want to put our audience in danger, right? That this is not, it's not possible. But I think we may need to come up with other ways to present live music that are safe. There could be ways to perform outdoors that are acceptable. There can be ways that if you have a hall that has 2,000 seats, maybe you only put 200 people in it and have space people out, and somehow, you know, can make it in a way that is safe. We have to come up with some solutions, because I have the feeling that no one else will do it for us. Like, you know, for politicians, art is often like the last thing they think of, you know. And I see now that in some countries that are kind of reopening, you know, it's like, well, okay, this store can be open and the car dealerships can be open and the gardening supply store, but, you know, art will always be the last thing.
The last, yeah, for sure.
So it's up to artists to kind of push and say, no, it is really important, and we have to find a way to do it that's safe, and it's important for us and for the people who listen to this music. And anyway, so that's my speech.
Augustin, thank you very much. I think I can speak for everybody who is still there, more than 200 people. And I think it was very important, because here in Brazil we have so many good young players who are a little bit lost now. And I think it's very, very important to be in touch, for these people to be in touch with some idol like you are here in Brazil. So thank you very much for your time. And by the way, it was my pleasure also to see you again, even if virtually, not in person. But all the best for you, for your family, and I hope to speak with you soon and to play more music together.
Me too. It was great to see you, Emanuele, and take care, stay safe.
Thank you.
And hope to see you
Thank
soon.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you.